Marketing in 2025 is wild. Savvy customers spot fake messaging instantly, privacy changes make ad targeting a nightmare, and everyone needs more content than ever. That's why you have to check out HubSpot's new marketing trends report. It doesn't just show you what's changing, it shows you exactly how to deal with it. Everything's backed by research, but focused on marketing plays you can use tomorrow. You ready to turn marketing hurdles into results? Go to clickhubspot.com/marketing to download it for free. Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, March 14th. I'm John Weigell here with Juliet, Bennett, Ryla, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Atari is one of the oldest video game manufacturers of all time, with big titles like Pong, and Raiders of the Lost Ark under its belt. However, they plainly did not stay on top of the gaming industry for too long. Their decline can be partly attributed to some flop releases, notably a disastrous release of the E.T. extraterrestrial title in 1982. So how did this game affect Atari, and where did they go wrong? We'll chat about that in a bit, but first let's give you the news in business and tech. First up, Intel announced Lip-Bu Tan as its new CEO starting March 18th. He replaces interim co-CEOs David Zinsler and Michelle Johnston Holthouse, who filled in for retired CEO Pat Gelsinger. Tan was previously CEO of Cadence Design Systems. And as a result of this, the stock has went up, at least on Thursday, 13%. Next, the world's largest 3D printed community has been finally completed. Construction company Lennar and 3D tech printing startup Icon partnered to print 100 homes in the Wolf Ranch development outside of Austin, Texas. The homes come in 2- and 3-bed models, and they start at just shy of $400,000, and they're 75% sold out already. As for what's going on inside, each home is solar powered and has textured rounded walls unique to the 3D printing process. From there onto the music industry, Spotify is paying out its artists. The company said that almost 1,500 artists generated over $1 million in royalties in 2024, while an artist needed to amass 4 to 5 million monthly listeners or 20 to 25 million monthly streams to reach the $1 million mark. More than 80% of those seeing payouts in the millions never had a song reach the app's global daily top 50 chart. The big-time players also fared pretty well. The amount of artists generating over $10 million has grown 600% since 2017, reaching 70 in 2024. Next, to kind of some Hollywood news. Vanna White, the co-host of Wheel of Fortune for over 43 years, has a pretty sweet deal going on. She revealed in an interview that she only works 34 days a year to film a season of Wheel of Fortune and earns a yearly salary of $3 million. Even though they film 6 shows per day of that 34 days, that still doesn't sound too bad. And finally, General Mills' new ramen products are tapping 2 of its brands, Old El Paso with fajita and beef birria flavors, and Totino's with cheese and buffalo chicken pizza flavors. The mashup gives General Mills an entry into the very lucrative ramen market, which is valued at $58 billion in 2023. Hey everybody, I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately. You know it, you love it. My First Million, hosted by Sam Parr and Sean Puri, is brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. My First Million features famous guests like Alex Hormozi, Sophia Amoruso, and Hassan Minhaj, sharing their secrets on how they made their first $1 million and how to apply their learnings to capitalize on today's business trends and opportunities. Talk about somebody that's really in the now. They had on Mr. Beast recently, and Mr. Beast talked about his origin story and how he made his first $1 million and how you can make anything go viral if you really try to do it, which is a great listen. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. You can catch all the recent episodes whenever you want, and you can listen to My First Million wherever you get your podcasts. And onto the main story, it's time to continue our failed product series with a release from vintage game giant Atari, who in 1982 released a game about E.T. that ended up being a catastrophic blow to their business. So Juliet, how was Atari doing before this release in the early 80s?
Great.
The best.
Yeah. Everyone loved Atari. To be fair, everyone still loves Atari, right? I mean,
of course.
Arguably just, a huge part of video game history, except for this one game. So Atari in the 1980s You're probably wondering, why did Atari make an E.T. game? And it's because they had made a Steven Spielberg game in the past that actually did really well. They made Raiders of the Lost Ark, based on, obviously, the 1981 Indiana Jones movie of the same name, a movie that I still like to watch to this day.
Great movie.
Great movie, great video game. Steven Spielberg was like, yeah, I'm on board for another video game about one of my movies. And in 1982, that movie was E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which that movie was a hit.
Yes. The game? I guess not so much, right?
No. And it's kind of a cautionary tale in what happens when you rush things. So Atari and Spielberg, they took a long time to settle the rights and negotiations. So by the time it got to the game designer, Howard Scott Warshaw, who had helmed Raiders of the Lost Ark, so this guy knew what he was doing, he had 5 weeks, about 5 weeks to have it ready. And you might be saying, okay, 5 weeks, that's not enough time. Why not give him more time? Well, capitalism, basically. They were like, it's got to be ready for the Christmas holiday shopping season. So you have 5 weeks to get this thing off the ground.
Wow. Oh, and unfortunately, it looked like he was unable to perform a Christmas miracle for them. And the game came out pretty bleh, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it was not great. So the point of the game was E.T., as you may know, needs to phone home.
I've heard his mission statement
that is
before,
kind
yes.
of the whole point of the movie. Yeah, very simple. E.T. must phone home. And so what you had to do is you, as the player, are E.T., and you have to walk around and find pieces of a phone to put together so that he can call his home planet. You also have to collect Reese's Pieces, which, you know, if you want to read about a famous product placement, Reese's Pieces and E.T. Zach did a whole story on it. It's a very successful product placement. The problem, though, was that the game just, it was simple, but it also wasn't very good. They skipped testing. A lot of players found it confusing. It didn't really have an ending. It also was expensive, not just to produce, but Atari paid about $22 million for the rights, which meant it had to sell about 4 million copies to break even. Because the game was not good, it only sold about 2.6 million, and about 670,000 of those were returned.
Okay, so not great at all. And Atari is kind of on top of the world before this, as we discussed. How are they doing after it? What is their earnings looking like going forward?
Well, what's interesting is that Atari may have been on top of the world, but E.T. was its second flop that year. It actually had released a poorly reviewed Pac-Man for the Atari 2600 console. So by the time Q2 rolled around in 1983, Atari was reporting a loss of about $310 million. Also not great. Its CEO, Ray Kassar, was charged with insider trading that same year and was cleared but resigned. So it was just already not a great time for Atari in terms of the flops that it had released, but also in terms of the market. Console games were heating up. There was an oversaturation of that market. And also people were starting to use personal computers more. You can also game on personal computers. And there was just a broader crash in the US industry in the mid-'80s of all of that, which opened the door for Japanese brands that we know and love today, like Nintendo and Sega.
Yes.
And those were the dominant brands. In fact, a US company would not again release a successful console until 2001, which is when Microsoft came out with the Xbox.
Yeah, so it seems like that this sprung on about 20 years of foreign domination of the American domestic market when it comes to video games. And of course, in the early 2000s, Sony became a big deal in the market. So having Nintendo and Sega kind of occupy that space, it makes more sense why Atari was getting drowned out, because it seemed like, honestly, they were quite outgunned technology-wise as well.
Yeah, and I think those games just, were honestly more compelling for consumers. People loved Mario. People loved Sonic. People still love those games. So, just not a good time for Atari or E.T.
There was also more on this, right? About the cartridges of the actual E.T. games being found somewhere?
Yes. And this is honestly the best part. So there were these rumors that Atari had literally buried unsold E.T. cartridges under cement, like it was some sort of mob hit, in a landfill in New Mexico.
Wow.
And, that's a great rumor, but it turned out to be true. In 2014, there was an excavation as part of the documentary Atari Game Over, which you can watch. And they turned up about 1,300 ET cartridges. And that is a small portion of what actually turned out to be a larger Atari graveyard that consisted of a lot of other games and hardware that Atari had dumped there. The good news here is that some of the ET cartridges were actually salvaged, and one is in the collection at the Smithsonian Institute as a testament to not only Atari's golden years, but also its decline and broader video game history overall.
Wow, that is a very dramatic way to dispose of all of your games under a pile of cement in New Mexico. It's like an episode of Breaking Bad or something. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It's like an Edgar Allan Poe story where the person who like rushed the game designer can still hear the beeps and boops of the failed game coming up from under the floorboard.
Right. And he's like buried with the cement at the end or something. Yeah, that's a good way to do
like, that. I should have given him 3 months.
Damn that Spielberg. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned up top, it seems like quite a cautionary tale to, not rush things and to kind of let things happen organically, because I mean, this ET game was rushed. I don't know much about the Pac-Man game that was released in 82 before this one, but given the 5-week turnaround time needed to make this game, I'm sure that Atari realized very soon after, when their business was crumbling, that they should allow more time to make more quality games like your Nintendos and Segas that started populating the space in the 80s.
Right. And, it's interesting now because now a AAA game, the kind of game that's going to win Game of the Year and be talked about on and on and on, is a game that's going to take years to produce. And people are going to put tons of hours into it. I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 took 6 years. Larian Studios took 6 years to make that game.
Yeah.
I read a post today in a gaming group where someone was like, I don't want a video game that makes me play it for 200 hours and has 9,000 side quests and I need a behemoth computer to run it. I just want a simple game. It's like, well, maybe E.T. was the game for you. But also, there are a lot of indie designers. Yeah. I mean, obviously, losing Adobe support for Flash made a lot of indie games go away. But you can still log into itch.io, and there's a ton of smaller games on there.
Of course.
But I think when you're a big gaming studio, you cannot rush your game. And also, you're going to need to do testing. And now you're also going to have to be, and this is something that did not exist for consoles back in the day. Any modern video game that comes out, and this includes Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077, they have patches that you download that fixes all of the shit they didn't miss before launch.
Yeah.
I think I have downloaded like 8 patches for Baldur's Gate, and I don't even know how many for Cyberpunk because I still haven't played it because it was glitching out the first time I tried. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff about modern gaming that is just so different. Like when you release a physical media game and it sucks, that's it.
Yeah, because it's over. It's over.
Yeah.
You can't improve it. It's done. Now, as you said, you could just edit really anything. If it's an online game, if it's available for purchase that way.
Yeah.
So easy.
And then if a video game studio offers mod support, then anyone can edit the game and make all sorts of things. So
exactly.
It was a different time.
Yeah. And if you're in the market for a simple game, I mean, I happen to know a large ditch in New Mexico where you could potentially find one.
Yeah, check it out.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we'll see you later.